in student finance and welfare, which is part of the Student Gateway on campus. And I'm here to do a presentation for you on sort of like how to manage your money. So I'm going to hopefully attempt to share a PowerPoint presentation with you, and I will go through that shortly. Okay, so as I say, it's just to kind of talk you through everything to do with the cost of living in the UK and things to be aware of, and also sort of like how to manage your money and budgeting tips and useful advice, because a lot of you, it might be your first time in the UK. So the things to be aware of are that, the costs in the UK of living could be very, very different to what you've experienced back home in your home countries. And also, obviously, we think it's useful for you to have an awareness of this type of thing that you're likely to experience sort of spending money on. So we've sort of thought of the basics, which is travel, food, clothing, daily costs, and also health costs as well. So it's good to have an awareness of all those types of things and how to help, manage your budget. So if we go on to travel, to give you this is just to give you a very rough idea of what the sort of costs are in England. So with bus fares, the average kind of journey might cost you about £5 roughly for a return ticket. So obviously, if you're spending on sort of like single tickets to go somewhere, then those costs will be different. The sort of thing you need to look at for your travel costs are whether or not the bus companies will give you whether you can buy a weekly pass or a monthly pass. So often when you buy things sort of like that last longer, you might save a little bit of money that way rather than buying individual tickets each time. Also, if you're traveling anywhere by train, which is obviously a lot more expensive, to give you a rough idea, if you were sort of traveling from Leicester to London by train, it's a very rough price to sort of let you know it's roughly about £70. But the prices can vary massively because it all depends on the time of day you travel, what day you travel, whether it's kind of off peak or whether it's at certain times of the day that are much busier. So usually kind of commuting times of the day can be more expensive. And also which kind of like train company the tickets are with. So, you could be spending sort of like quite a small amount on a ticket or quite a lot. It's useful to obviously book your tickets in advance because it gives you a chance to shop around for the best cost. Also, you might want to buy a young person's rail card because that can give you sort of like a third off your costs for your tickets. And also, obviously, the cost of that for the year would be about £30 for a young person's rail card that lasts a year, or £70 if you were to buy one that lasts 3 years. You can do all sorts of things as well, like looking for special offers for your train tickets. There are certain websites that sort of tell you how to do split journeys. So rather than just getting a direct ticket from Leicester to London, it could be that, if it's a train that stops on other journeys along the way, you can fragment your tickets, which might be cheaper. Also, the key thing to be aware of with train travel is things like first class and second class. So if you're in a first class carriage, the ticket cost is a lot more expensive than second class or regular sort of travel. And there's not a huge amount of difference in the services on offer. So always try and avoid first class travel. And also obviously things like Megabus as well for discount websites for things like coaches. So coach travel is usually cheaper than train, but it is obviously a lot slower. So it all depends on what you need out of your travel, but it's just to give you an idea of the sorts of things to look out for. So with cost of food, this is to give you a rough idea as well about the types of costs if you're not familiar with how much things might cost. So we tend to advise students to say that on average, if you were buying your food and toiletries from a local supermarket, we usually say to estimate, £25 a week, but it could go up to £40, if you've got sort of specialist kind of dietary requirements and that sort of thing that you need to sort of shop for. So supermarkets are a good place to kind of buy everything. And Also, obviously, you can sort of like get supermarket own brand, which is a value range, which is a lot cheaper than buying branded items. So it's about how you shop and to shop carefully. To give you an idea of the cost of what your lunch might cost you, sort of, especially on campus, it's not always cheap, So even if you venture into town, the average cost of sort of getting a sandwich and a cup of coffee could be between £6 and £8. So if you factor that in like every day of the week, and then every month, and every year, that soon mounts up to a hell of a lot of money. So our advice is to obviously kind of like carry a reusable water bottle with you, or also a travel mug, if you want to bring in your own coffee or tea from home, and also making your own packed lunches and things. If you've got leftover food from the night before, that can save you a lot of money for your lunch, rather than buying it every day on campus. And just to give you a rough idea, if you were to go out for a meal for two in a restaurant, it all depends on where you go and what you order, whether or not you're kind of like you've got alcohol or not with your meal. But it could be anything between sort of £40 to £50, for the two people, or significantly less at cheaper places, or significantly more at a lot more expensive places. So you're sort of thinking about roughly £20 for one person, maybe in a restaurant. Okay, so clothing. Hopefully you'll have come to the UK with a lot of the clothes that you need, but in case you still need anything, clothing or shoes, the costs can vary massively. Luckily, you're very near to the city centre of Leicester, which has got a huge amount of shops for all sorts of things, for clothes and shoes. But to give you an idea of like a branded jeans of diesel will be anything from roughly sort of £70 to £150 just for one pair of jeans. So you have to be careful not to kind of be tempted by buying all the branded items at sort of like really high cost. And to give you an idea on a couple of the shops in town, Primark and TK Maxx, they offer a lot cheaper prices for clothing. So that's a useful one to kind of like look for those. And also charity shops. They're a real kind of like a British institution. There's lots of charity shops spread around in town. So they tend to sort of sell secondhand clothing, that's all clean and in good order. They're in good, they don't sell anything that's kind of like grotty. So you often get really good bargains in charity shops for next to nothing. Often they sell a lot of vintage items as well, if you're into that. So yes, it's a good way to kind of like buy clothes at a really, really cheap price, and you're helping a charity as well. So again, sort of everyday costs on things. So a tea or a coffee, if you're buying them at a sort of like a Costa or a Starbucks, something like that, you could be shelling out, as much as £3.50 for one drink. If you're buying newspapers, it could be anything from 55p to up to £4, depending on the paper. If you happen to smoke, again, depending on your brand, it could be anything from £9 for a packet of 20 up to £13. And a pint of beer is, on average, again, it varies massively from place to place. And obviously some places are sort of student led, that give student discounts, but on average, it's roughly £4 for a pint of beer. Your laundry, if you're going to use a sort of like either on campus or sort of like a laundrette, it could be sort of £3 just for a sort of a standard wash. And socializing, that's entirely up to you what you might spend on that, but you could be looking at sort of anything from £20 to £50 and above, on a night out, depending on what you do. Because it could be obviously the cost of drinks, it could be admission costs into sort of into clubs, it could be taxi fares, all of that. So bear those in mind. Then health costs, that might be something that a lot of you aren't aware of how it works in the UK. So with opticians, you would have, if you needed an eye test, you could be looking at anything between £20 and £30. But you could look out for offers. So there are some opticians and shops like Boots, which is in the city centre. They often potentially will offer a free eye test, but that's on the kind of like it's in conjunction with the fact that if you do need glasses, that you're going to be buying them from that optician. So have a look for what offers are around, but that's on average what an eye test might cost you. If you need a dentist whilst you're in England, it could be anything from £18 plus for like a minimum sort of just a bog standard checkup, or anything from £50 upwards if you need some specialist dental work. And you may well know about sort of the UK, that we have the NHS, which is the National Health Service. So obviously, people that live in England, that are sort of born in the UK, we have that free as part of our, what we're allowed to tap into. But if you're an international student, again, it could be that it's free for you as well, but your visa would need to state that you need to be living in the UK for 6 months or more. So if you need to kind of see a GP or a doctor, or go to a hospital, then just double check your visa and what it says. Okay, so common problems that you might come up with. So not budgeting carefully. So that's the thing that we're talking about today, is that if you are careful and you budget properly, then you should be okay to make your money last. But if a lot of students, not just internationals, but home students as well, fall into the trap of spending too much too soon. They don't factor in about how many months they need to make each kind of like amount of money last. If they kind of get paid monthly in their wages, for example, you need to make it last all month. We advise to kind of like check your bank statements, because also obviously keep your details secure if you do online banking, but it's really good way of kind of like keeping track of your spending. You might also, obviously, one of the problems you might kind of come up against is if you spot any unusual activity on your bank account, on your bank statements, you need to report it to the bank straight away, just in case you become the victim of some sort of scam or fraud. So checking your bank statements regularly is really good to kind of like avoid that happening. If you happen to have a credit card, we hope that it's a 0% interest one. But if it's not, obviously you need to kind of like pay the minimum amount that the credit card company advises you pay every month. Otherwise, obviously, our advice is to pay off in full every month if you can afford to do so, so that you avoid any interest. Insurance. So a lot of people don't think that they need to kind of like insure their possessions, which is often in the UK called contents insurance. One company that you can use that's very geared up to student insurance in particular is called Ensley Insurance. So a lot of people sort of take the gamble to think that they won't need it, but then they often come to us and say either sort of like they've had some damage from something that's happened in the room, or they've had something stolen, unfortunately. And the unfortunate thing is that we're unable to sort of help in all those cases, because the expectation is that you would have contents insurance to insure anything expensive like your computers, your mobile phone, all of those things. So if you haven't already done so, it's really advisable to look into contents insurance. And also, obviously, you need to kind of factor in that you need money for flights home as well. And also, as we spoke about earlier, not preparing a budget. So that leads me nicely on to setting up a budget plan. So what we'd say is that you would need to work out what your weekly or monthly income is. So it might be that you're having money kind of sent to you from abroad, either from a sponsor or from family. So it's about how often you're getting that money in, whether it's weekly, monthly, or termly even, or sporadically, it's not regular. Or you might get a job whilst you're in the UK. You might work part-time, and again, you might get paid weekly, fortnightly, or monthly. So you have to factor in how often you're getting that income coming in. And then you need to kind of list your regular essential outgoings. So we've just put some examples here. So your rent, your food, your TV license, money for travel, health costs that we mentioned earlier, any clothing or shoes, course costs, you might need books and equipment. So there's lots more that would go into a budget plan, but those are just the basics. And obviously what money you've got coming in is your income, and the money you've got going out is your expenditure. And you need to work out whether you've got enough income coming in to offset against your expenditure. So you need to make a weekly budget plan for those essentials and only spend what's left, what we call your disposable income, on things like the gym, socializing, fun, so you only sort of spend what's left rather than kind of spend it and then realize you've not got enough money left for your basics. Okay, so how to pay in the UK. So I've just put a graphic up here to just show you what the coins and the notes look like. So that's kind of like what all the money looks like. It may well be that you might have brought some money to the UK. Depending on how old those notes and coins are, you might find and get told in a shop that it's no longer legal tender because some of them have been updated since then. So if you have brought any cash to the UK that's old tender, you can take that to a UK bank. There's lots of banks in Leicester city centre, and you can get that exchanged for the the current currency. So just be aware of that, and also about what people call things. So you might see things, where it sort of says 1p or 2 pence. There's different kind of like terminology that we use. So things like £5, it might be referred to as a fiver. Often we sort of say the word quid as well for sort of like for pounds. So there's lots of things to kind of be aware of about the language that goes around the cash denominations as well. And one thing that's kind of like really taken off recently, partly it was in the UK anyway, but especially sort of after the coronavirus took hold, a lot of organisations now have contactless, which we didn't used to have quite so much, but it's really available in nearly all places now. So I've put the contactless symbol up on there for you. So that's where you just literally just go and tap your card, your bank card on the system. You don't even have to put a PIN number in. So at the moment, the amount that you can, the maximum amount you can use for contactless is £45. But on the 15th of October, that is due to rise to £100. So just be careful of that, because it's very quick to go around sort of tapping your card in lots of places. And £45 isn't quite so bad. When it goes up to 100, you could be spending a lot of money and not realising it, sort of thing, because of the ease of paying. So something to be aware of. And then just these are our contact details, really. So what we would say is, if ever you're struggling financially, or you just need some financial advice, and you want some advice on how to budget, please do get in contact with us rather than struggling by yourself. We're available all year round, even through the summer months, when you might be here and you might think we're not, but we are. We're available all the time. So our contact details are on there, our phone number, our email address. We have our website on there, which I've put, which we've got a whole wealth of kind of like useful information on there. So please do make use of our website, because we've tried to kind of improve that a lot over recent months. We've got frequently asked questions and stuff like that on there. And the other thing as well that I would really encourage all of you to do, we're joined up with an organisation called Black Bullion, and they work with a lot of universities nationally, and they have a whole wealth of stuff that we've sort of bought into. So the budgeting tool link that I've got on the bottom there for the Be Money Smart, what you would do is you sign up for Black Bullion, and it's linked to DMU. It's personal to you. You kind of like can go in and do lots of kind of quizzes, sort of like little courses. There is a specific one on there, which is a pathway course, which is about 25 minutes for you to do. And it is specifically for international students. And it's about easing into life in the UK. It's about banking and budgeting. So it's a really good thing to do. So we would really encourage you to sign up to Black Bullion. And you can do those at your leisure, as and when you want to, and you can dip in and out of as many things as you like, and it's just there for the duration. So yeah, I would encourage that. So the key thing as well, just to sort of say, that I've not covered, is things like there's Leicester Market in Leicester city centre. That's really good for buying your fruit and veg, as well as lots of other things like meat and fish and clothing. it's a really kind of like renowned market, so it's good to get yourself familiarized with that. They often sell things off cheap at the end of the day, usually around sort of 2, 3-ish in the afternoon, maybe when they need to pack up. The other thing as well is you might get a student discount card, which usually might give you sort of roughly 10% off in certain shops and restaurants and cafes and things. So look into getting that as well. But the main thing is making a list for your budget and sticking to it. If you're going to kind of like go shopping, make a list before you go. Don't shop when you're hungry, because you tend to buy more things when you're hungry. And also just keeping track of your bank balance. So those are the key bits of advice that I would give. So hopefully I'm going to stop sharing. And if we've potentially got any questions, we can go to that. So just bear with me while I come in. Okay. So just to say, in case sort of we're just waiting to see if any questions do come in, but please feel free to do that. I'll keep an eye on that. So sorry if I'm looking a little bit distracted. But just to let you know some other things as well that might be useful. A lot of you might be new to the UK, and obviously we all know about the pandemic that's going on and coronavirus, and a lot of you might kind of come to the UK and at some point might be struggling financially, partly because of family back home, and partly because you might kind of get a part-time job. It might work for a while, but then you might lose your job, that sort of thing. It's all things to kind of be aware of, and I don't mean it to sort of sound gloomy, but it's just a bit sort of hard to know how the job market is going to go in the UK at the moment. Things are sort of picking up since our restrictions were lifted, especially in the hospitality industry. So that's things like restaurants, cafes, hotels, all of those sorts of things. And a lot of people just assume that there aren't a lot of part-time jobs going, but please do look for part-time jobs, because there may well be things, and you might be surprised. Just to say as well, you might get to know international students that were here last year. They might well tell you about sort of help and support they got from us last year. We used to run COVID funds as a little bit of a contribution to students when they were struggling financially. A lot of the money that we got for that was from our UK government. So we were given a really big pot of money that we were able to distribute to students to help with the COVID crisis financially. Unfortunately, there's no word of anything happening this academic year coming from the government. So I just wanted to put you in the picture that a lot of international students that are already with us in the UK and were here last year might tell you about kind of COVID funds that we were running last year. But at this moment in time, unfortunately, we don't feel that we're potentially going to be able to run anything this year. Obviously, if we get more advice from the government and we do get any extra money, we will be the first to sort of like publicise that to you, to let you know. But I think the landscape is very different this year to last year, in that obviously all the restrictions are lifted. So I think the government's kind of perspective is that things have sort of gone back to some sort of normal, and that it's potentially, people can look for part-time work. So it's just something to be aware of, really. And also, just to let you know, there are limitations. Other sort of presentations you may have today or throughout the week will tell you about this, but there are limitations on how many hours a week you can work in the UK as part of your visa. And so I'm not the expert on this, but I think it's something like up to 20 hours a week during term time. But I think you can work more hours a week in your vacation, sort of like the summer, for example. But you just need to kind of like make sure that you check all of that. So I'm assuming there aren't sort of any comments or questions coming through, but please do put them in the chat if you have any questions of things that I've not covered. I can see that the email address has been put on there as a reminder. One thing that one website actually that you could go on to is it's I sort of abbreviate it to say UKISA. It's UK CISA. I'm just going to sort of see if I can copy that to see if it can be hopefully the people that are sort of helping me out sort of with the technical stuff might be able to share that for you. But it takes you to a page where it sort of says about sort of finances and things. So it basically outlines that there we go. So it's just come up on screen now. Thank you for that. So it just sort of tells you about the fact that it's very limited in terms of kind of like funds and things in the UK. It also gives you lots of information to do with kind of like whether you're entitled to benefits or not, but a lot of the time that's to do with again what your visa and everything states. So it's usually there's things like it's either indefinite leave to remain, limited leave to remain, you know, and your sort of like your cards, your permit cards might say things like no recourse to public funds. So if it says things like that, that means you can't then tap into the budgets, to the benefits, sorry, that are available in England. But it's a useful website. Please do have a look at that as well. It's external to the university, just got some useful information. And the UKISA site has got lots of other sort of stuff on there, not just financial, but everything to do for sort of international students. So yeah, but as I say, the key thing is don't kind of like try and struggle through throughout the whole time that you're here. You know, we're just available, as I say, sort of like we're still doing a lot of support remotely. As you can see, I'm kind of doing this presentation from home. So we do offer a lot of appointments for students. So we can still sort of see you in appointments via kind of like either sort of these video things or just phone appointments. We are starting to kind of return back to campus as well. So, you know, we're going to gauge sort of how much people want to see someone in person, but we fully understand if you're still a bit reluctant to do that. So that's why we still offer phone appointments for everyone as well. So just make sure that you make best use of all the resources that are available to you. So our website, the UKISA website, the Black Bullion, if you can sign up to that. There's a whole wealth of stuff on there that's really useful, and it's fun. It's, you know, good graphics and everything. So it tries to make a slightly boring kind of subject a lot more interesting for you. So that's what I would advise. But we're available all the time for you to kind of like come and speak to us whenever you want to. You can either contact us via the email that was kind of publicised earlier, or by phone, or booking an appointment. But yes, I think that's kind of pretty much, I've drawn a couple of comments. Right. So there's one that sort of says about, is there a recommended app for expense tracker? There's a lot on the market. I mean, do sort of shop around. Obviously, don't go for any apps that you have to pay for. But really, not to try and say about utilizing our services, but there's a whole budget planner available to you via the Black Bullion thing, which is free. And it might just be that kind of like those kind of systems which have been designed for students, and they've been used nationally, which we're tapping into at DMU. It may well be that the apps that you have kind of on your phone are for anyone, you know, who's not a student, whereas the ones that we've got via Black Bullion are tailored specifically for student use. So not to say about publicising ours over those, but I would recommend using Black Bullion and stuff just because it's tailored for student use. We did used to publicise an international student budget planner, but that's unfortunately no longer available online. So thank you very much. That's my time up. Thanks, everybody.